The mining station Calidus 9 was never meant to fight. It was a patchwork of prefabricated hulls and jury-rigged reactors orbiting a gas giant no one had bothered naming. Its purpose was to chew at the planet's rings for minerals and ship them off, not withstand a war. Yet war had come. The first impact rattled the outer hull. Metal shrieked as if the station itself was screaming. The lights flickered, and Elias Rourke was thrown across the control bay, slamming into a console. His ribs ached, but he didn't pause. He clawed his way upright and scanned the status readouts, half of which were dead, the other half screaming alarms. Outer sections D through H breached, the computer droned. No kidding, Elias muttered, sealing the lines on the panel with a rapid override. He tasted metal in the air. Oxygen was bleeding out of the ducts faster than the pumps could replace it. The Calidus 9 was a gutted fish bleeding into the void, and Elias was the idiot trying to stitch it with duct tape. Over the comms came a new voice, low, resonant, unearthly. It rolled through the speakers like a blade across stone. Queen Shora, your walls fall. Your air flees. Surrender and your kind will be spared servitude. Elias barked a laugh, wiping blood from his lip. Servitude? Lady, we can't even keep our cafeteria running without riots. You sure you want to babysit us? A pause. Then, you mock. That is all your species knows, noise and waste. Elias ignored her. He was already moving, snatching his toolkit and sprinting through the corridor. Gravity was still holding, barely. Panels overhead rained sparks as power conduits overloaded. He slapped a respirator over his face and dove into the maintenance hatch. His comm pinged again. Shora, your kind dies quickly. Efficient. Efficient? Elias muttered, yanking open a junction panel. I've seen your drones. Take 6 of them to unscrew a bolt. He jammed a bypass coil into place, forcing energy back into the life support grid. The hum of circulation returned, faint but steady. For now, air would keep flowing in the central modules. Screams echoed faintly down the shaft, crew who hadn't made it to shelter. Elias bit down hard, jaw clenching. He couldn't save everyone. Not now. Another tremor rocked the station. His wrist screen flared, breach at reactor 2. If that went critical, the whole station would peel apart. He cursed under his breath and scrambled deeper. The reactor chamber reeked of ozone and scorched insulation. 2 coolant pipes had ruptured, spewing vapor across the deck. And beyond the mist, shapes. Insectoid drones, carapaces glistening under the emergency lights, mandibles clacking. Elias froze. They hadn't seen him yet. He slipped behind the coolant stack, pulled a spanner from his belt, and whispered to himself, big damn heroes, right? Sure. Let's play exterminator. The nearest drone skittered toward the console. Elias hurled the spanner with all his strength. It clanged off the panel and the drone spun, clicking in alarm. In that instant Elias lunged, yanking the emergency lever that released the chamber's fire suppressant. White foam cascaded from the ceiling, burying the drones in choking layers. Their limbs flailed wildly, screeches muffled under the chemical blanket. Elias didn't wait, he sprinted for the control dais and slammed a manual override. Containment shutters groaned into place, locking the chamber and sealing the drones inside. Enjoy suffocating, you cockroaches, he gasped, collapsing against the console. The comms crackled. Shora, primitive tricks. You delay, not triumph. Elias smirked despite the burn in his lungs. Delaying's all survival ever is. And humans are damn good at it. He limped out of the chamber, ribs stabbing with every breath. The corridors were emptier now, most crew either dead, evacuated, or hiding. The silence weighed heavier than the alarms. Halfway to command, he found a young technician crouched under a flickering light. Her visor was cracked, one arm hanging limp. She looked at him with wide, terrified eyes. Rourke, they're everywhere, she whispered. Not everywhere, Elias said, kneeling beside her. He pulled a quick seal patch from his kit and slapped it over the visor crack. You breathe, you move. Head for the escape pods. Stick to corridor C, most of the swarm's on the other side. She nodded, trembling, and staggered away. Elias watched her go until she vanished into the smoke. Only then did he turn back toward command. The door was half ajar when he arrived. Inside, consoles were shattered, glass crunched under his boots. The commander's chair was empty. Dead silent. Then the view screen lit up. Not human feed, alien transmission. The image that filled the screen was nightmare-made flesh. Queen Xirathi loomed, a towering insectoid figure crowned with iridescent spines. Her multifaceted eyes reflected endless motion, as though the entire hive shifted behind them. Xirathi, you are alone now, human. Your nest crumbles. No rescue comes. Why persist? Elias planted both hands on the console, meeting her gaze. Because giving up would make this too easy for you. And I don't do easy. Not for bugs, not for anyone. Her mandibles clicked, a sound like grinding metal. Curious. You speak as though you matter. Your life, one grain of sand in a storm. Insignificant. Maybe. But sand in the right place jams gears. Breaks machines. Even queens. For the first time, Xora's posture shifted, barely perceptible, but there. She tilted her head, as though studying a specimen that refused to die. Amusement. That is what you bring. A toy thrashing before it shatters. Glad I could brighten your day. Elias keyed in new commands, rerouting auxiliary power. He just turned the station's remaining turrets toward the docking bays. They wouldn't hold forever, but they'd burn a few drones to ash before failing. Explosions thundered through the hull. The turrets were firing, and the swarm answered in kind. The entire station shook, metal groaning in protest. Elias held his ground, watching the tactical display flicker as red icons winked out one by one. The Queen's voice came softer this time, almost a purr. Interesting. Perhaps your kind has more teeth than expected. But teeth break. Soon you will kneel. Elias leaned back in the shattered chair, every bone in his body aching, and let a grin twist across his face. Lady, I don't kneel. I build. I fix. I patch holes until something better comes along. And if I can't fix it? He gestured around at the ruined command deck. I make sure no one else enjoys it either. Xirathi hissed, and the screen cut to black. The silence returned. The only sound was the distant thrum of the reactors and a faint crackle of flames in broken conduits. Elias sank back, breath ragged. He had maybe hours before the swarm broke through again. Maybe minutes. He checked the console one last time, fingers steady despite the ache. Systems failing, crew scattered, enemy pressing in. Odds stacked to hell and back. And Elias Rourke, engineer, survivor, stubborn bastard, squared his shoulders and muttered into the dark. Let's see how long I can keep pissing her off. Elias's boots scraped over the grated floor as he stumbled into the engineering bay. The massive space was half-shrouded in smoke, warning sirens shrieking overhead. A dozen consoles blinked red, and the hum of the reactor behind the armored blast doors throbbed like an angry heartbeat. He wiped grime from his forehead with the back of his glove. All right, Rourke. She wants you on your knees? Let's show her how humans do groveling. He coughed, yanked a panel open, and dragged out a bundle of fiber-optic cabling. The mining station was his home, and more than that, it was a puzzle box built from 1,000 mismatched parts. Corporate had cut corners everywhere, outdated fusion cores, second-hand coolant lines, even recycled air scrubbers. Elias had cursed those decisions for years. Now he was grateful. Improvisation was his mother tongue. He thumbed his comm. Xirathi, you still listening? Always. Your frantic breaths amuse me. Good. Then listen close. You came here for our drills, our reactors. But you didn't ask yourself what happened when a human decides you don't get any of it. Spoiler alert, we're bad at sharing. The Queen's chittering laugh came like knives on glass. Threats from prey. Delightful. Elias shut the channel before she could say more. No point letting her get in his head. He had work to do. He hauled out a portable welder, sparks flaring blue-white. His fingers flew, patching wires in ways no manual recommended. He rerouted coolant overflow into a set of cargo ducts, then sealed the doors with a pry bar hammered sideways. The jury rig wouldn't last long, but he didn't need long. The floor shook again. Through the bay's porthole, a swarm of Xirathi drones scuttled along the outer hull, needle legs puncturing plating, mandibles dripping acid. They moved like a living tide. Elias's jaw clenched. Every miner, every freighter docked to the station, was prey in their eyes. A voice crackled again. Your vessel is a carcass. Yet you scurry about, patching holes in a corpse. Why? Because, Elias said, tightening the last bolt with a grunt, this corpse has teeth. And I'm aiming them. He slammed a lever forward. The rerouted coolant surged, condensing into a slick sheen along the corridor outside. A heartbeat later, he twisted another valve and sent a surge of power into the floor grates. Blue arcs raced across the metal. The first wave of drones shrieked as electricity fried their limbs, bodies twitching before they went still. Elias allowed himself a grim smile. That bought a few minutes. Not victory, just time. Time he could turn into something useful. He staggered toward the fabrication alcove, a cramped space stacked with spare plating, conduit spools, and an aging 3D printer the miners used to replace broken drill teeth. He shoved debris off the printer, keyed in a program, and watched it whir to life. While the machine printed, he rummaged through bins, pulling out coils of wire, scrap piping, and half-drained plasma cartridges. His mind sketched blueprints faster than his hands could follow. He wasn't a soldier, but war wasn't only fought with guns. It was fought with traps, with grit, with a stubborn refusal to give ground. A scrape echoed from the far corridor. He froze, listening. The chitter of clawed feet, then silence. They were probing again. Drones weren't creative, but they learned patterns. His trick wouldn't work twice. He tapped the comm. Hey, your bugs are terrible electricians. Want me to give them lessons before they fry themselves again? Shora's voice slithered through. Your defiance costs you time. You could kneel. You could serve. I would keep you alive, little maker. Your hands might amuse me longer than your blood. Sweet of you to care. But I already have a boss who doesn't pay me enough. Don't need to. You squander your spark. We could refine it. You cling to debris and call it survival. I offer eternity. Elias ripped the fresh printed casing from the machine, snapping off cooling fins. Lady, eternity with you sounds like hell with extra steps. A hiss crackled in response, but he'd already shut the comm again. He slid the casing over the piping, wired it to the fusion backup, and filled it with compressed hydrogen. It would make a nasty surprise when the drones pried open the next hatch. His wrist screen chimed, reactor 2 coolant at 40%. If it dropped further, the core would melt straight through the station. Elias cursed under his breath, grabbed his kit, and sprinted down another corridor. The air was thinning. Each breath felt like drinking through a straw. His ribs throbbed. He pushed past the pain. That was what humans did, kept moving. As he rounded a corner, a drone lunged from the ceiling. Mandibles snapped inches from his face. Instinct took over. He jammed his welding torch into the thing's thorax and squeezed the trigger. Flame erupted, filling the corridor with the stink of burning chitin. The drone screeched and collapsed in a twitching heap. Elias didn't wait to admire his work. He kicked the carcass aside and pushed on. At reactor 2, he found another rupture. This one was worse, liquid hydrogen geysed into the chamber, frosting the floor in pale rime. 2 more drones were already inside, their claws hammering at the emergency controls. Elias ducked behind a panel, checked his improvised hydrogen bomb, and grinned through the pain. All right. Time to take you bastards ice skating. He flung the rigged pipe into the chamber. The drones turned, their compound eyes glittering. Elias slammed the door shut and hit the manual ignition. The explosion was muffled but brutal. The bulkhead bucked, heat searing through the metal. Red warning lights flared, then steadied. Reactor 2's status light flickered from critical to stable. He bought them more time. Then the con hissed again. "Clever little mammal," Xirathi purred. "You wound my children and still you breathe. I wish to see this persistence with my own eyes." Elias spat blood onto the floor, wiped his mouth, and laughed. "Be my guest. Just knock first." The screen in the reactor chamber lit up again. Xora's alien features filled it, mandibles twitching, eyes like shards of obsidian. "Do you know why we devour your kind?" she asked. "Because you're jerks." Elias shot back. "Because you fear. Fear drives you to cling, to fight with scraps and sparks. It is interesting. But fear cannot win." "Maybe not. But I don't need to win. I just need to make sure you don't either." He cut the feed, locked the controls, and slumped against the wall. His lungs burned, his head pounded, but his mind was already racing. The station had more than reactors. It had mining charges, enough shaped plasma to rip through kilometers of ice. Enough to make this whole orbit a graveyard if placed correctly. Elias pulled himself upright and opened another panel. He began to rear out power conduits toward the ore elevators. His hands shook, but his grin widened. If the Queen wanted to see what humans were made of, he'd give her a demonstration she'd never forget. The lights flickered again. The swarm was cutting deeper, faster this time. The station groaned as another section depressurized. Elias muttered, "Come on, old girl. Hold together a little longer." He slapped a hand on the bulkhead, as if the station could hear him. Somewhere deep in the structure, metal screamed. The Queen was coming. He looked down at his hands, grease-streaked, blooded, trembling but still moving. He thought of the mining crew scattered in escape pods, of the young tech limping away with patched glass. He thought of Earth, of the endless smug looks from older species who thought humans were a cosmic joke. "All right," he whispered. "Let's set a proper trap." He grabbed the charges, slung them across his back, and disappeared into the choking smoke of the station's dying veins. The corridors of Calidus 9 had gone strangely quiet. No more thunder of impacts, no more shrieking drones gnawing at the bulkheads. Elias crouched near the reactor conduits, waiting. His makeshift charge was set, its blinking light half hidden beneath twisted steel. All that remained was to lead them into the choke point. He checked the oxygen readout on his wrist. 32%. Enough to keep his head clear for maybe an hour if the system didn't fail again. He adjusted the respirator, flexed his burned hand, and listened. A sound like glass grinding on stone carried down the corridor. Slow. Deliberate. Not drones this time. Too heavy. Too intentional. Guess Her Majesty decided to come calling. A shape emerged from the smoke. Taller than two men, limbs jointed like sickles, carapace shimmering with oil-slick hues. Behind her, drones skittered in formation, but it was the Queen herself who held his attention. Her eyes gleamed like clusters of midnight jewels, unblinking, impossibly calm. Elias forced a crooked grin. "You know, I pictured you bigger. Don't take it personal." She tilted her head, antennae weaving. When she spoke, her mandibles barely moved, yet her voice filled the chamber. "Xirathi, you are the engineer. The one who dares to spit sparks in my tide. I wish to witness this anomaly." Anomaly's just a fancy word for someone who doesn't die when you expect them to. Elias tapped the wall beside him. "We make a career of it." Her forelimbs brushed against the steel, as though testing its memory. "Your constructions are fragile. Yet you cling to them as though they were brewed. Why? Because we built them with our hands. You wouldn't get it." A pause, a low hum resonating in her chest. "We build hives that span worlds. We shape stars with our swarms. What are your trinkets compared to that?" "Maybe nothing," he said. "But when one of our rigs breaks down in the middle of nowhere, we don't have a billion sisters to fix it. We fix it ourselves. We learn, we improvise, we make something from nothing. That's the difference. Her eyes glittered, reflecting him back 1,000-fold. Improvisation. Chaos masquerading as strength. You say chaos like it's a bad thing. The drone shifted behind her, their limbs scraping the deck. Xirathi raised one claw and they froze. She studied him as though he were a specimen under glass. Do you know what we call your kind among the hives? She asked. Let me guess. Delightful appetizers? We call you the erratics. Unstable. Dangerous to yourselves. You burn bright, then fall. It is fascinating. Your kind survives not through order but through accident. Yet here you are, standing before me, daring to resist. I must understand. Elias's eyes flicked to the coolant pipes he'd rigged. The charged timer blinked steady, waiting. He needed her closer. You want to understand humans, he said, easing backward toward the junction. Come a little nearer. I'll give you a demonstration you'll never forget. She advanced, each step a thunderclap on the deck. The drones followed, their bodies scraping the walls. Elias retreated, keeping his pace uneven, as if he were on the verge of collapse. His chest burned, but the act wasn't all theater, he really was close to dropping. He ducked into the junction chamber. The improvised bomb pulsed quietly under the grated floor. He leaned against the console, forcing his breath into ragged gasps. Xirathi entered, her immense frame bending to clear the bulkhead. The drones poured in behind her, lining the walls like armored statues. This nest will be mine, she said, voice low and resonant. Your metals will feed my children for centuries. You are a fleeting species. Why throw your life into the void? Elias's hand hovered over the ignition. His vision blurred, but his grin didn't falter. Because, Your Majesty, we've been throwing ourselves into the void since the first shuttle left Earth. And every time, we came back with something new. Fire, ships, colonies. Even mistakes teach us. That's how we got this far. Her antennae twitched. And yet you will perish here. Alone. Forgotten. Maybe. But if I go, I'm taking a few hundred of your kids with me. Call it a farewell gift. He slammed the switch. The charge roared to life. The floor beneath the Queen's drones erupted in a fountain of burning hydrogen, plasma igniting with a scream like tearing metal. The chamber became a sun. Drones shrieked as their shells split, legs curling inward. Xirathi reared back, chitin blackening, mandibles spread in fury. The blast wave hurled Elias into the bulkhead, and for a moment everything was fire and ringing silence. He woke sprawled on the deck, ears bleeding, chest aflame with pain. Through the haze he saw the Queen still standing, though scorched, her carapace cracked and oozing pale fluid. She looked, diminished, but alive. You burn yourself to wound me, she hissed. Madness. Elias coughed, forcing himself upright. Not madness. Strategy. You expected me to value survival above all else. But sometimes, the only way to win is to make sure no one does. Her vast eyes narrowed. You would destroy your own nest rather than yield. Such waste. Funny. From where I'm standing, it looks like economy. You don't get the ore, you don't get us, and you limp home nursing burns. That's a bargain. For the first time, her voice wavered. You would trade your life for defiance. He dragged himself toward another console, every muscle screaming. Lady, I was raised on a rock where the sun barely rose, where the only thing between us and vacuum was what we welded together. We've been trading our lives for tomorrow since before your kind even noticed us. Xirathi loomed over him now, charred shell creaking. Her drones hesitated at the edges of the blast-scorched floor, unwilling to step onto the still-sparking metal. You are not as I expected, she admitted, her voice like a knife scraping bone. Perhaps the swarm has misjudged your species. Elias let out a dry chuckle, blood flecking his lips. Don't flatter yourself. You didn't misjudge us. You just never bothered to look. For a heartbeat, silence hung in the airlock. Smoke coiled between them, painting shadows across her fatigued eyes. Then the Queen's mandibles clicked once. Very well, engineer. Let us see how far your ingenuity carries you before the void claims your spark. She raised a claw, signaling her drones. They began to circle, testing the edges of the scorched floor, looking for a path to him. Elias tightened his grip on the console, mind racing. The charges he had left weren't enough to kill her outright. But maybe they didn't have to. He needed another trick, something bigger, smarter, riskier. The reactor core still thrummed behind its armored shell. He'd stabilized it for now, but the truth was ugly, the station was already half dead. If he wanted to keep Xirathi from claiming it, he had one option left. He looked at the Queen towering over him and whispered, "Time to stop playing defense." The word steadied him. He tapped in a new sequence on the console, fingers leaving streaks of blood across the keys. Power rerouted. Failsafes overridden. A chain reaction waiting to be unleashed. The Queen's head snapped toward him. Her voice was sharper now, less amused, edged with something he hadn't expected. "What are you doing, human?" Elias met her eyes, saw his reflection fractured into 1,000 shards. He smiled through the pain. "Showing you exactly what we're made of." The floor shuddered. Warning klaxons wailed louder. Somewhere in the depths of Calidus 9, the reactor began to groan. Elias braced himself. The trap was only half sprung. The rest would take everything he had left. The station shuddered under Elias's boots. Warning klaxons wailed, reactor alarms overlapping into a single maddening chorus. Heat radiated from the walls, the core was awake, trembling on the edge of meltdown. Elias wiped blood from his mouth and kept typing commands with hands that shook. Every override he punched in stripped another layer of safety. Failsafes were gone. If the chain reaction completed, Calidus 9 would tear itself apart, taking half the swarm with it. Behind him, Queen Xirath's vast silhouette loomed through smoke and flickering emergency light. Her burned carapace oozed pale fluid, but she still stood unbowed. Drones clustered at her flanks, their claws tapping in restless cadence. Her voice coiled around him. "Madness. You would incinerate your nest, your brood, yourself, rather than bend. Such wasteful pride." Elias didn't look up. "Call it insurance. If you leave empty-handed, then it's worth every bolt. You mistake destruction for victory." He glanced back, lips curling in a grim smile. "You mistake survival for surrender." The Queen's mandibles flared. Her drone scuttled forward. Elias slammed a final command, then ripped the console's control rod free. Sparks spat across his arm. The floor lurched violently as the reactor groaned. A vent burst above them, showering fire. Drones screeched and recoiled. Xirathi shielded herself with her forelimbs, her eyes glinting through the haze. Elias staggered to the side hatch. Every breath was knives in his lungs, but he moved fast enough to duck into a maintenance shaft. Metal shrieked as drones slammed into the walls behind him. He crawled through smoke-choked dark, the air tasting of copper. The shaft spat him out into the mining bay, vast, cavernous, littered with half-loaded ore haulers and the enormous plasma drills used to gouge the planet's rings. The place was chaos incarnate. Cables sparked, coolant rivers hissed across the deck, and ceiling plates sagged dangerously. Perfect. He dragged himself toward the central lift where mining charges were stacked in neat rows. Each one could vaporize a canyon of rock. Together, they'd make a starburst bright enough to be seen from orbit. His comm crackled again. The Queen's tone was lower now, almost intimate. "You do not need to do this. You have fire, yes, but no exit. I will claim what remains when you burn." Elias snapped a charge into its harness, locking it to the base supports. "Lady, you've missed the point. I'm not trying to survive this. I'm trying to make sure you don't forget it." "Why?" she pressed. "What drives you to destroy what you swore to protect?" He paused, fingers hovering over the detonator port. The question cut deeper than he expected. His voice came out rough but steady. Because survival's not enough. We're builders. We lay steel where there's nothing. We turn black rock into light. If I let you take this place, I prove you right, that we're just prey waiting for a bigger predator. But if I burn it before you touch it, I prove something else. That we choose our own ending. Silence. Then, a hiss like steam. Defiant until ash. Very well. Then let the void judge. The deck shook as her drones poured into the bay. Elias ducked behind a loader, fumbling with the detonator. The first volley of acidic spit ate through metal inches from his head. He darted across open ground, ribs howling, and slammed the last charge into place. One drone leapt, claws aimed for his throat. Elias spun, caught it midair with a plasma cutter, and carved it apart in a spray of sparks and chitin. He fell to one knee, gasping, but forced himself back up. Shora entered the bay then, her immense frame blotting out the failing lights. Burn scars marred her shell, but her presence filled the room like gravity. She moved with terrible grace, stepping over slag drones without pause. End this farce, human. You bleed. Your body fails. You cannot stop me. Elias raised the detonator, thumb poised over the trigger. Maybe not. But I can make you limp home without your prize. Her antennae curled, her mandibles spreading wide. If you ignite this place, you die with it. That's the point. They stared across the ruined bay, two figures locked in stubborn resolve, one ancient, bred for conquest, the other, battered, burning on borrowed time. Shora's voice softened, almost curious. Tell me, engineer, what name will your kind give this suicide? Elias grinned through blood-streaked teeth. We'll call it a reminder. He pressed the trigger. The charges roared, a blinding chain of plasma fire racing along the bay. The floor split as shockwaves tore through the supports. Shora shrieked, a sound that rattled the marrow, as fire engulfed her drones. The blast consumed everything, steel, or an alien flesh. Elias was flung across the deck, slammed into the loader with bone-cracking force. He barely registered the pain. Through the flames he saw Shora retreating, her scorched frame stumbling toward the exit, her fury echoing in the comms. This is not the end, human. The swarm remembers. Then she was gone, dragging what little remained of her guard. The mining bay collapsed behind her. Fire consumed the charges, and the chain reaction spread toward the reactor core. The station was dying. Elias crawled, one arm useless, vision tunneling. He spotted an old survey pod hanging half-buried in debris. Its hull was dented, canopy cracked, but the engine light flickered faintly. He pulled himself inside, slumped against the seat, and slammed the hatch shut. The pod systems coughed to life, protesting every line of code he forced through them. He bypassed ignition locks, rewired power through life support, and smacked the console until the engine sputtered. Outside, the station was unraveling. Great plumes of fire tore through its spine. The gas giant's rings reflected the blaze like a funeral pyre. The pod lurched free, spinning into the black. Elias strapped himself in with trembling fingers. The last of the station's explosion lit the void behind him, brighter than a sunrise. He let his head fall back, chest heaving, every breath a battle. For the first time, the comms were silent. No hissing voice, no droning threats. Just the hum of a battered pod cutting across the void. He whispered to no one, "Told you, lady. We don't kneel. We build." His eyes fluttered closed as the pod drifted into the endless dark, leaving behind the shattered carcass of Calidus 9. Far off, in the scarred flagship of the swarm, Queen Shora nursed her wounds. In the stillness of her private chamber, she admitted what her pride forbade her to say aloud: humanity was not prey. Humanity was dangerous.